What makes a legacy? John D. Rockefeller, when you hear that name, what cocks into your head? Robber baron, captain of industry.
Yeah, those labels get thrown around a lot.
Exactly. But today, we're going to skip the usual debate. We're looking at his entire career, but specifically through the lens of problem solving. You want the insights? Fast. Well, this deep dive is all about pulling out the lessons, how he spotted challenges, how he engineered solutions, things you might even apply yourself.
It's really a masterclass in navigating massive change. We've broken it down, looking at his journey in like 7 key stages. Each one presented a different kind of problem he had to figure out.
Right, so we'll walk through those stages, not just saying what happened, but digging into how he thought. He tackled the obstacles at each point.
It helps you get past the simple good guy, bad guy thing and see the strategic thinking involved.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Stage 1, mastering the basics. Before oil, Rockefeller was an assistant bookkeeper. Simple as that.
But crucial. That was his boot camp, really. Learning efficiency, cost control, the absolute fundamentals.
Then came his first actual business, a partnership. Needed $4,000. And get this, he borrowed half from his own father.
At interest.
Yeah, paid an interest. That tells you something about his mindset early on.
Yeah.
Right? Then the Civil War hits, profits jump, and they make a strategic pivot away from food towards oil. You can already see the problem-solving gears turning.
Oh, absolutely. A few things jump out even then. One, he was already sweating the details, like calculating transport costs really carefully. Super important for physical goods. 2, he understood the system. He figured out how to use things like rebates for preferred shippers to get an edge. Not changing the rules, but, working them.
Clever.
And 3, that willingness to borrow, even from family, with interest. That shows a calculated risk assessment. He saw an opportunity and went for it.
And the payoff? Well, first, he got that deep understanding of finances, the bookkeeping bedrock. Second, his first venture actually made decent money.
Solid income, yeah.
And third, crucially, he showed he could adapt. Pivoting from food to oil. That's a big shift, spotting where the demand was heading.
So the lessons for entrepreneurs today, first, you have to know your numbers, costs, systems, everything. Master the details.
Totally.
Second, always look for leverage. Even with things that seem fixed, like shipping rates back then, find the angles.
And third,
don't be scared of using capital, borrowing, if the opportunity is good and the terms work. Calculated risks.
Okay, stage 2, spotting a brand new industry and jumping in. We're talking 1863. Rockefeller invests in a Cleveland oil refinery.
Right when kerosene is starting to take off, it's becoming essential, basically, for lighting.
And it was kind of wild back then, right? Relatively cheap to start a refinery, maybe only $1,000 or $2,000.
Yeah, low barrier to entry, which meant chaos. Lots of players, lots of volatility. But Rockefeller seemed to see past that to the long game.
So what problem-solving signs do we see here?
Well, first, identifying that growth potential, picking the right fledgling industry to bet on. Second, recognizing that kerosene wasn't just a fad. It was becoming a fundamental need.
Like a staple commodity.
Exactly. And third, that decisiveness again, fully shifting focus with his partners from food to oil as the market changed. That adaptability.
And the benefits of getting in early, huge. He was positioned right at the start of a boom.
Perfectly placed for the post-war growth, westward expansion, all fueled by oil.
In that initial refinery, that was the launching pad for everything that came later.
So thinking about today, what's the lesson? Well, 1, keep your eyes open for those emerging markets. Be willing to get in early, even if it feels uncertain.
Calculated risk again.
2, understand what people really need, what products or services are becoming essential. And 3, be ready to pivot. If the market tells you something, listen. And don't be afraid to change course, even dramatically.
All right, stage 3. This is where he really starts tightening the screws. Optimizing everything, eliminating waste. Big moment in 1865, he borrows more money, buys out his partners. Now he's got total control of the refinery.
And that control was vital, because the big problem then was inefficiency. Crude oil refining was wasteful. Like, other guys were just ditching maybe 40% of every barrel.
40%. Just gone.
Pretty much. But Rockefeller looked at that waste and saw opportunity. He started finding uses for the byproducts: gasoline to power his own refinery, lubricating oils, Vaseline petroleum jelly, paraffin wax, tar, naphtha.
Wow, he used almost everything.
He did. And he didn't stop there. He brought plumbers onto the payroll, started making his own barrels, anything to cut costs and reliance on outsiders. This is peak efficiency focus.
Okay, so the problem solving here is clear. One, getting that direct control by buying out partners.
Crucial first step.
Two, that innovative thinking about waste. Turning trash into, well, not quite treasure, but definitely into revenue streams.
And lowering costs at the same time. Win-win.
And three, integrating those related services, the barrels, the plumbing vertical integration basically to cut external costs.
The benefits were immediate. Operating costs dropped significantly.
Made it way more competitive.
Exactly. Plus, those byproducts became extra profit centers. And pretty soon, his refinery wasn't just a refinery, it was the biggest, most efficient one around.
Lessons here. Seems pretty straightforward, but powerful.
Yeah, I think so. One, gain control over your core operations if you want to truly optimize them. Two, look at your waste. What are you discarding physically or metaphorically that could actually have value?
Turn weaknesses into strengths.
Sort of, yeah. And three, think about vertical integration. Does it make sense to bring supporting functions in-house for cost or quality advantages?
Okay. Leads us nicely into stage 4, dealing with the chaos of the wider industry. Consolidation time. 1870. Standard Oil is officially born.
And Rockefeller's stated goal, to solve the problem of what he called cutthroat competition. Too many players, unstable prices, inefficiency everywhere.
His solution was direct. Let's say that. Basically, buy out the competition, systematically.
Often giving them a choice. Take a fair price for your refinery now, or, well, we're going to crush you with our efficiency anyway, so you'll likely go bankrupt.
Which led to the infamous Cleveland Massacre around 1872, absorbed something like 22 out of 26 competitors in just a few months.
Yeah, it was incredibly fast and aggressive. And interestingly, Rockefeller apparently saw himself as, like, cleaning things up, bringing order. An angel of mercy was a phrase associated with his view.
So, problem-solving science here. One, a very deliberate, systematic strategy for horizontal consolidation. Buy up your rivals.
Ruthless but systematic. Two, using those tough negotiation tactics, leveraging his efficiency as a weapon.
And three, that genuine belief, it seems, that consolidation was actually good for the industry, saving it from itself, perhaps.
The result for Standard Oil, absolutely game-changing. They rocketed to dominance, eventually controlling something like 90% of U.S. refining.
90%.
Yeah. They imposed structure, efficiency, standardization on a previously messy industry. And to be fair, it did reduce that wild price instability.
So, lessons for today. This one's tricky, given antitrust laws.
Very tricky. You can't just go out and do a Cleveland Massacre today. But the underlying ideas, one, proactively thinking about market stability is still relevant, just within legal bounds.
Okay.
Two, building scale and efficiency still provides massive competitive leverage. And three, if you are considering mergers or acquisitions, having a clear value proposition for the company you're approaching is still key, even if it's absorption, just legally.
Right. Okay, stage 5, he's got the refining mostly locked down. Now, how do you get the oil where it needs to go? Controlling the supply chain, the transportation problem.
Standard Oil didn't just refine, they went vertical. Big time. They got into pipelines, built their own fleet of tank cars, even set up home delivery networks.
The relying on railroads was a big vulnerability.
Huge. Railroads were expensive, powerful, and potentially could even become competitors themselves by getting into the oil game.
So Rockefeller saw pipelines as the answer.
Exactly. A cheaper, more reliable way to move oil that he controlled. He went all in on building and buying pipelines.
Which led to conflict, didn't it? With the Pennsylvania Railroad.
Oh, yeah. The Pennsy tried to muscle into oil transport. Standard's response was brutal. Price wars refusing to ship oil on their lines.
Yeah.
Basically strong-arming them until the railroad gave up and sold its oil interests to Standard Oil.
Wow. Talk about controlling your destiny.
So problem-solving signs. One, identifying transportation as that critical bottleneck and cost center.
Find the weak link.
Two, envisioning and then relentlessly pursuing an alternative infrastructure, the pipelines. That was visionary. And three, using those aggressive tactics, price wars, boycotts to defend that strategic control over logistics.
And the benefits are pretty clear. Lower transport costs.
Dramatically lower.
Gaining control over how the oil moved. Less dependence on others.
Total game changer for reliability and planning.
And knocking out the railroads as potential competitors in the oil business itself.
Took away a major threat.
So the lessons here seem pretty relevant still. One, identify and control the crucial parts of your supply chain.
Know where your vulnerabilities are.
Two, investing in your own infrastructure or tech can give you a huge strategic edge.
If it makes sense, yeah. It's a big investment.
And three, you got to be ready to defend your core business when threats appear. whether from competitors or even powerful suppliers.
Within limits, of course. But yeah, protect your position.
Okay, stage 6. You build an empire this big, this dominant. You're going to attract attention. Navigating regulation and public perception.
Yep. Standard Oil became synonymous with monopoly power. Criticism mounted, investigations, lawsuits, indictments. It became a huge national issue.
And you had journalists, the muckrakers, like Ida Tarbell, writing these scathing exposés.
Tarbell's history of Standard Oil was incredibly influential, really turned up the heat.
And it all culminated in...
The big one, 1911, the Supreme Court orders Standard Oil to be broken up. The ultimate challenge.
So at this point, Rockefeller's problem-solving has to shift, right? It's less about business operations, more about managing legal battles and, well, his image.
Definitely. The problem became surviving this onslaught of legal and public pressure. We see the problem solving in how they dealt with countless court cases, how they responded or didn't respond to the journalism, and then later, Rockefeller's own efforts like publishing memoirs, trying to shape his legacy after the fact.
And despite all that pressure, Standard Oil did hold on for decades before the breakup.
Remarkable, really. And after retirement, he did pour effort into that legacy management. It's also worth remembering, the context. The late 19th century was a pretty rough and tumble business environment. His methods emerged from that era.
Lessons for today's leaders from this phase.
Well, first, growth attracts scrutiny. If you get big and successful, expect regulators and the public to take a close look. Be ready.
Don't be naive about it.
Exactly. Second, you need to proactively manage your reputation. Ignoring criticism or bad press usually doesn't work long term. Engage thoughtfully.
And third,
know the law. Especially antitrust and monopoly regulations. Understand the legal landscape you're operating in, particularly as you scale.
Okay, final stage. Stage 7. After the business building, the fights, the breakup, comes philanthropy. Problem solving through giving.
And this wasn't just an afterthought for Rockefeller. He was giving from a young age, like 6% of his very first salary. By 20, it was over 10%.
Wow, so it was ingrained early on.
Seems so.
No.
But in retirement, it became his main focus, and on an immense scale, giving away most of his fortune. But crucially, it was strategic giving.
How so?
He wasn't just writing checks randomly. He set up big, focused foundations. The Rockefeller Foundation is the famous one. He funded major institutions like the University of Chicago, Rockefeller University.
And the goal wasn't just charity, right? It was something more.
Yeah, his philosophy was about tackling problems at their root, using science, research, modern methods to solve big societal issues, disease, ignorance, not just patch things up temporarily. He even brought in expert advisors, just like he did in business.
Applying the same problem-solving mindset, just to different problems.
Exactly. So the signs here. 1, seeing philanthropy itself as a strategic tool for solving major human problems.
Not just writing checks.
2, creating structured organizations, foundations, universities to make that giving effective and lasting.
Building systems for good.
And 3, bringing in experts to guide the work, ensuring the money was used efficiently for maximum impact.
The benefits. Well, lasting institutions that have done incredible work in health, education, science.
The legacy there is undeniable and ongoing.
He gave away most of his staggering fortune.
One of the biggest philanthropists in history.
And arguably, it did help reshape his public image over the long term.
It certainly added another dimension to his legacy.
So, lessons from this final stage.
1, philanthropy can be more than charity. It can be strategic problem-solving applied to societal needs. An investment, really.
Okay.
2, if you're planning significant giving, structure matters. Think about the vehicle, the goals, the governance.
Make it effective.
And 3, don't be afraid to seek expert advice to make sure your giving achieves what you intend it to. Maximize the impact.
So when you look at the whole arc, from that first bookkeeping job to funding global health initiatives, it really is an incredible story of constant problem identification and solution building.
Yeah, whether it was tiny inefficiencies in refining, or the chaos of an entire industry, or transportation bottlenecks, or legal threats, or even huge societal problems, he approached them all as things to be analyzed and solved.
The methods were often controversial, no doubt about it. But the underlying mindset, that relentless focus on finding the problem and engineering a fix.
That's the core thread running through it all.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. How can that mindset, identifying the bottlenecks, driving for efficiency, controlling the key levers, how can that be applied today? Ethically, legally, in our modern world.
Right. The tactics might need to be different innovation, maybe partnerships, developing new markets rather than just consolidating old ones.
But that fundamental problem-solving drive, how can you harness that for impact today? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. What makes a legacy? John D. Rockefeller, when you hear that name, what cocks into your head? Robber Baron, captain of industry.
Yeah, those labels get thrown around a lot.
Exactly. But today, we're going to skip the usual debate. We're looking at his entire career, but specifically through the lens of problem solving. You want the insights fast. Well, this deep dive is all about pulling out the lessons, how he spotted challenges, how he engineered solutions, things you might even apply yourself.
It's really a masterclass in navigating massive change. We've broken it down, looking at his journey in like 7 key stages. Each one presented a different kind of problem he had to figure out.
Right, so we'll walk through those stages, not just saying what happened, but digging into how he thought. He tackled the obstacles at each point.
It helps you get past the simple good guy, bad guy thing and see the strategic thinking involved.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Stage 1, mastering the basics. Before oil, Rockefeller was an assistant bookkeeper. Simple as that.
But crucial. That was his boot camp, really. Learning efficiency, cost control, the absolute fundamentals.
Then came his first actual business, a partnership. Needed $4,000. And get this, he borrowed half from his own father.
At interest.
Yeah, paid an interest. That tells you something about his mindset early on.
Yeah.
Right? Then the Civil War hits, profits jump, and they make a strategic pivot away from food towards oil. You can already see the problem-solving gears turning.
Oh, absolutely. A few things jump out even then. One, he was already sweating the details, like calculating transport costs really carefully. Super important for physical goods. 2, he understood the system. He figured out how to use things like rebates for preferred shippers to get an edge. Not changing the rules, but, working them.
Clever.
And 3, that willingness to borrow, even from family, with interest. That shows a calculated risk assessment. He saw an opportunity and went for it.
And the payoff.